walai o ka ua Lili ua i ke manao I kona ni O ko mamaka ona ona I ka ua Lili o ko leo I ka makani a ke aloha Leana ka ngaua o lanai I ka mei o ka inanei Ano ano
This is Tuesday the 28th. We're at Oahu Cemetery. We're doing a scrub down today with Ulu, Eli, and Emily Kandagawa. Right now we're taking a little break because we're sitting at the gravesite of James Kaulia, a Hawaiian patriot. You can tell by the little flag there. And we've been going here and there, starting at Kekuni's site, which is across the street, and scrubbing down the headstones of Kekuni and his sister and his grandmother, I believe, and their family members. They're the Pilts Ohana. So we're having our first Issues That Matter talk story in the public. And what exactly are we talking about? I don't know. What does it feel like to be stuck in the house or wherever it is that you're like sheltering in and unable to do the kinds of practices, cultural practices that make sense to you? Ulu, what's your thought?
Wow. So first of all, thanks all of you that are staying home and helping us to curb this thing. I don't think our ancestors or our kupuna would have ever thought that we would be in a situation like we are. But we're here, and the one thing that I have noticed is that during this time I've been doing a lot of reflecting on past Aloha Aina legends, and that we can still show them love even though we're in this pandemic. We can still practice social distancing and all of that good stuff and come and connect to them in a way that's not disturbing or not unhealthy. And I think right now we should all be doing that. We can't just be talking about how we need to go back to the old days. We need to live those words. And by what we're doing here today, I think that kind of helps us be grounded into that thought. So yeah, go clean a cemetery and go visit your friends, your neighbors, your ancestors. Go say hi. Go have lunch with them. Cemetery is a good place to have lunch. It's so quiet.
Awesome. So I noticed that you guys are like sitting on either side of me, keeping good safe distance, and Emily is like wearing her face mask to be safe. What is your thinking around, I don't know, what we should be doing during this particular strange time? I know what we are doing, but what should we be doing?
So I've been thinking a lot about how, I mean, there's historical precedent for what happens when pandemics like occur, not just in recent history, but the last 100, 200, 500 years. So our ancestors have been through this before, and so I'm thinking about how to integrate the wisdom of that experience into this experience. And I think it's a call to be better listeners. And I think being in a cemetery and taking care in this way and being comfortable in the silence and being comfortable in the reflection that the pandemic is kind of forcing upon a lot of us. I think that's important to figure out where we want to go in the future. Everybody's talking about, I can't wait till it goes back to normal and I'm so bored and all of these things. And I think, is that really what we want? Do we really want to go back to normal? Sitting here with James Kaulia and all of these, and the Campbells down the way, and like, is that really what they would want for us? Like, to go back to normal and miss this opportunity to really sit with them, listen, and do a little deep dive to figure out how we can move forward when we actually can leave the house. How can we move forward and act in ways that are in better alignment with our values and the vision that we have for the future.
Good idea to think about what, I guess the assumption is that when it's all over, we're going to go back to normal, like normal is good. And so kind of what you're saying is that, yes, we can go back, but do we want to? I mean, like, is there some other plan, or could there be another plan? What's your thinking?
I think that, again, drawing from historical precedents, the historical precedents for the Hawaiian Kingdom is progressive, and there were never there's a grounding in cultural practice with an eye toward the future that doesn't neglect the past, kind of thing. So I just really feel that taking time to sit in these spaces and try to listen and reflect on what it is from the past that's calling to be remembered and put into practice in the present is so important. And there's no way that we can move forward in a way that is pono, that is encouraging of and nurturing of the kinds of qualities that we as individuals and we as a collective should be embodying and putting into practice and putting into our systems of economics, our systems of politics, our systems of all of these systems that during this epidemic have been shown to be so off balance, so fundamentally flawed and unjust. How on earth do we expect to move forward in a good way unless we address those things? And what are the historical precedents and practices, cultural practices, ancient practices Native people have been doing for thousands of years? What can we do to bring that forward into the present moment in the time that we most need it?
You sound like, in some ways, like Keanu. Because his point always was to actually let history teach you.
Yes.
Don't be like just jumping off the roof.
We don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah,
That's the thing.
it's been done.
It's been done.
Yeah, and so, and I'm really happy because obviously we have learned a lot from him. But Ulu, so while we're over there scrubbing, I noticed that you took a particular delight in the cleaning of these like black, kind of moldy headstones.
I chose
What was
the
that?
hardest, most covered stones because I felt like they've been here the longest with the most uncare, I guess you could say, and they've been hidden for so long. So I feel like now is a good time to let them out, bring them back to life, so to speak, uncover who they are.
Do you
Let
think?
their names be known to the world
Okay,
again.
so following up with that, do you think that kupuna who have passed also might have some way to weigh in on what the future might look like?
Oh, absolutely. I think kupuna from the past are constantly weighing in. They're leaving us so many signs, especially now during the epidemic, of what we need to change, what worked in the past. You know, they're always talking. I think it's just a matter of sitting in places like this, in the quiet, and just really opening yourself to hearing what they have to say. So many people say that they, hear messages from their ancestors or whatever, but hearing them is only one thing. What do you do with the information that you're given, I think, is really important. And, it's easy to ignore the voices of the people you cannot see. But to put into actions the messages that we're getting sent, I think is a good way for us to not just hold on to the things that they left behind, but for us to instill those things in the next generations is super, super important.
Kind of like what you're saying, this whole idea of putting into action. You can think sad thoughts about those who have passed and blah, 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 and never do anything about it. So you got to think about, given our restrictions right now, what could we possibly do? And there you are, scrubbing somebody's headstone and daylighting them, basically, because prior to, I don't know, maybe the last 10 or 15 or 20 years, who knows? Nobody knew who was there. Their headstones are like black. But
And
now
you
we know.
brought up a good point too. You know, some of these families may not even be around anymore to come and visit the ancestors that they have buried here. So if we take all of those things into consideration and think that, you know, even though we don't know the person that's laying next to the person that you know, we're all neighbors here, and maybe they don't have family to come clean up after, you know, whatever. And if you have the time and your heart calls, then why not do it? It's a community effort, even within the cemetery.
I'm looking at this little ahu over there, and so I wanted to ask Emily, what was the thinking behind building that little ahu on the headstone that is designated for James Kaulia, even though his name is not on it, but we know he's here.
I was gonna make you cry. Um, so I didn't actually like. So when I came up there, we already kind of from the last time we were here, we had a lei that was basically held down with these 4 stones, and so lei's all crunchy now, and so just cleaning it up and pouring the water and scrubbing it down, and then you know, what do you do with these 4 stones? They shouldn't just sit there on the, you know, on the side, neglected and separated. And so I just took what I had, and it just, I don't know, it just happened. I don't know how else to say it. It just kind of happened, and I think it's, because when you pointed it out, like, oh, it looks like a little ahu, and I think maybe it's like kind of symbolic that, you know, at least for me personally, I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. Like I don't know what I'm doing. And especially in a time like now, it feels like everything is so up in the air, and I don't know what the next move is. But yet, like here we are cleaning this headstone, and then you got these 4 stones, and you don't know what to do. And what do? You build an ahu like out of nowhere. And so I think that's, you know, it represents the way that, you know, every ahu is like that bridge between the realms, and it's a way for us to connect. And even, you know, even the little stone or the dirty stone or the really nice looking stone, like all these stones maybe like representing us and representing, you know, wherever we happen to come from, humble beginnings or whatever it is. We're just putting what we have in an effort to connect, and we bringing all those things together. I think is a good place to start when you don't know where else to start.
Right, and I guess I would echo what Ulu said. You get these ideas, and you don't really question where they come from, and then you go ahead and you act on them. Mm-hmm. And the next thing you know, you're making an ahu. Mm-hmm. You may not have been a conscious intent, but the outcome is good. It's a really good thing to do, to just kind of like go with the flow. We're sitting in the middle of a cemetery, for goodness sake. There's a lot of people here who were heroes, patriots, and a bunch of people here who really didn't like us. As Hawaiians, as Native people didn't like us at all. Yeah, and they're all over the place. And then in the process, what is interesting to me is in the process of cleaning the headstones, I noticed that if you're going to clean a headstone that is black, you don't really know who's under there. You're going to daylight someone who may not have been a friend. So it's kind of deep for me. I'm wondering, what do you think about that? What do you think about caring for somebody's ancestor who may not have done well by us?
So that's a really interesting question, because I was just looking at this. There's a man named Bayo from Nigeria who I was listening to his talks about a couple podcasts and talks that he's given over time, and he talks about the importance of slowing down. He talks about these Yoruba proverbs that say, you know, the times are urgent. Let us slow down. And one of the things that came up in that talk that he gave last year, almost exactly a year ago today, he said, the enemy of my ancestor is also my ancestor. And that hits so hard. The enemy of my ancestor is also my ancestor, and most of us, even if we are not aware, at some point in our genealogy, we're all connected to those bad guys. And so thinking in those binaries when we're trying to problem solve for a time like this is not actually very helpful. And I think that if we're going to be doing this deep work, we're talking about bringing these the kupuna that headstones are black. We're talking about bringing them to light in a physical sense, scrubbing them down. That's in a spiritual sense too. We're trying to bring light to those names, to those families, that they can step forward. We can call on them. What do you have to offer in a time like this? We don't want you to be forgotten. Is there something that you can share with us? Because we need you. And that work of digging deep, like going into pole, basically, that super creative, generative space from the kumulipo and from within, I feel like that's where we need to go. That's the invitation now with this quarantine, is to go there and to think about things like, is the enemy of my ancestor also my ancestor? And what do you do with that? You clean a headstone and you sit and you listen. And then when a call comes, when you're in that space of relaxation, when you're in that space of receptivity, to that really bewildering question, as this man Bayo describes, bewilderment, where the question is returned to you. Do not ask, oh, I don't know what to do. Can you give me a straight, firm, easy answer of what to do in a time like this? And instead of answering the question, your ancestors or whatever intangible powers may be, they'll return that question to you and say, can you clean up this headstone, please? Or,
Exactly.
have you seen the Pleiades? Have you heard the bird song this morning? How was that? Or why is the sky blue? Something like that. That's completely unrelated, but it forces you to put yourself in a place where I'm just cleaning this headstone. I don't know what else to do, but something happens. Even if you're not aware of it in the moment, even if you're not aware of it could be a year later, that something finally clicks, and there's that moment of change. You're open to it, that receptivity to change. Something will shift. Sooner or later, something will shift.
Kind of get the sense something has shifted. So, and then I'm listening to you and I'm feeling like freaking overwhelmed, because I know that what you're saying is true. And how hard is it for us to just sit and pay attention? And I don't know what we're doing here. We're just here. Talk to me, Unu. Who's calling you? Some babies, I know.
I just wanted to touch back again on what you were saying about that spiritual feeling that you get when you're uncovering a name, because we don't know. I mean, the black is so thick that we don't know who's under there.
That's kind of a history,
And I think about, as I'm cleaning and as the names are being uncovered, is this somebody that at one point while they were alive, did this person cause damage to our people? And for me, I think the finishing of cleaning one stone, not knowing who that person is or how they relate to our story, for me is a way of healing. I'm a very unforgiving person, and I will blame the 5 generations that come after for the thing that your great grandfather did. I'll hold that against you, because that's how I am. I've been that traumatized by all of this. But at the same time, doing what I'm doing with these black headstones makes me come to terms with the fact that what happened to us will never change. We cannot go back in time and fix any of that. But what we can do with respect is understand that we will never let history repeat itself. And if uncovering these names, whether they were friends of ours or not, will help them now become a part of this whole process, or help them to be able to see what maybe what they caused, It's for me, it's all a part of healing. And I think especially right now, with all the uncertainty that's going on and all the questions and all the anger that's getting built up from us being locked up in our houses, this is a good way to start the healing process. If not for anybody else, for yourself.
So strange. For me, strange because initially the idea was to do a service, for Kekuni, in particular for him, in particular for his family, because those headstones from the, I don't know how many years we've been doing this, those headstones had been covered over, and so we were guessing that must be his grandmother, that must be like their family, and we didn't know because you couldn't see, but now we know. And so we came to do a service, but what I'm hearing from both of you is that you actually came to receive something you didn't know, and I didn't know, and I don't think Emily knew either. So in the process of doing one thing, a whole bunch of other things open that
I found a lot of kids today.
yeah, you're always finding them.
There's-
They'll find you.
There's a lot of babies in these cemeteries, and I don't think people are aware. You know, they're not just full of old people. There's babies down here. There's kids down here.
I think your sadness, and I think you're sad, comes from the fact that there are kids down here whose headstones are blackened. That means no one comes and no
take
one
care of
remembers
them.
them.
Well, I'll come and take care of them. I'll remember them. That's
Yeah.
the least I think we can do for people that are living. Is not just to complain about what's sitting on our land, but to take care of what's there. We cannot move these cemeteries. We cannot move these headstones, but we can make sure that the people that are laying here are respected. I remember for whatever it was that they did.
It's a good thing.
It is. I mean, how do you remember a baby who's only alive for a year or a day with your heart, even though you don't know what their face looks like? You just remember. Sing them a song. Something.
Clean their headstone. Bring a
Their
flower.
headstone.
Yeah. You got final words, Emily?
Um, just thinking about like how Olu was talking about the grief that's there, and I can't help myself because I keep thinking about plants and I keep thinking about medicine and all these like metaphorical connections and how grief is carried in the lungs, and what is coronavirus but an infection of the lungs, and it's a call for us to be present to the grief that has been unfelt. And I think that the big way that has never quite happened, that maybe it needs to happen piecemeal, but that big way about everything from 1893 and prior and after, all these things, like how do we feel that grief, like how do we process that grief and that anger and all of these emotions all the way through to the point where something can put through that is what we want. And also thinking about the babies that are buried here, and if it's true, as most cultures know, is that the ancestors, that children are our ancestors returned to us. Then I am my ancestors. I am the physical embodiment of my ancestors, and coming to take care of them is taking care of me. And even if a baby took its first breath and only breathed for a few months or a year or 5 years, that ancestor came through for a reason and served a purpose. And how do we honor that purpose that they came to serve? And did their purpose end when they were buried in the ground? No, of course not, because we're here right now.
Because we're here, yes.
Because we're here right now. I am my ancestors, returning to my ancestors, and all, cycling. And so it's a beautiful thing. I really love it. And so it brings me joy. Even if it's bringing me sadness, the sadness is a bridge to get you to the joy. It is an expression of joy. Sadness.
So don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid. So we're sitting here like final thoughts on James Kaulia. We're sitting here at the Kaulia grave site where all the ancestors and relatives of James Kaulia are also buried in this spot. It's a good place for us to end, and it's a good show. I think it's a good show. So join us one more time. I don't know when, someplace, sometime, and for another Issues That Matter. You might say Issues That Matter on the road. And this is Lynette Cruz, and you didn't see me, but you don't have to see me because I'm not the guest. Thank you, everyone, for watching.
kalai o ka ua Li'ili ua i ke mana'au I ko nani O ko mamaka ona ona I ka ua